Hello, everyone. If you can hear us and see us, drop in the chat. We are so happy to have you here today. Also, while you're here, drop where you're from, what time it is for you. I want to know. We'll be getting started in a few minutes, just waiting for everyone to join in. Stacy, Christina, how are you?
Doing good. I feel like I love the sunshine and the warm weather now with the summer, and the longer days are really nice too. Um, so yeah, doing great.
Lots of people from California. Nice. And Texas, Indonesia. See so many people from all over the world. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, we're so happy you can be here with us today. Thanks for joining our series.
Yeah, excited to talk more
Here.
and give everybody tips and tricks, and talk more about Sony and what we look for.
I love your background, Christina.
Love yours too. Yeah, if you guys have a favorite Sony animation project, please let us know in the chat. We'll see some good ones. Surf's Up is one of my favorites too, actually.
Yeah, Spooderman too. Spooderman. Amazing. Love it. Spider-Verse, Mitchell's, Vivo. Yay. How to Train Your Dragon is actually DreamWorks, but also amazing. Cloudy with Sesame Balls. Nice.
Oh, Emoji Movie. That's one that we don't usually hear, so that's awesome. So happy to hear that.
All right, it looks like we have a lot of people. I'll get started. So, if you're ready, let's do it.
Feeling good.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this year's Summer Speaker Series hosted by the one, the only Sony Pictures Animation, as well as Asians Animation. I'm Katie Dizon, Managing Director here at Asians Animation, and I will be honored to be leading today's panel. So a little bit about the series. Sony Animation started this speaker series back in 2021 as a way to provide partner organizations like Asians Animation with direct access to executives, creatives from Sony Pictures Animation who will share insight and give you an exclusive look into the various departments at the studio. We are so excited to partner with them for a series of weekly panels kicking off today and continuing through the end of August. So be sure to tune in on upcoming conversations on storyboarding, visual development, the animation pipeline, and creative development. Today, we are honored to start the series with a panel on animation recruitment and demystifying the job seeking process, which will be a candid discussion on breaking down how the Sony Pictures Animation recruiting team looks for talent in the industry, what are the best ways to stand out when job seeking, and how to land that dream job. So, if you are among those looking to enter the animation industry, you're in the right place. Just a little housekeeping about this panel. So I'm going to introduce the candidates, introduce our speakers, and they're going to do a quick presentation. We'll all ask them questions after, and then we'll do audience Q&A. So stick around, and without further ado, let's get on with it. Stacy, Christina, please introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to join us for this talk with us. We're really excited to be here and tell you more about us and what we look for and everything that Katie just mentioned. So I am a recruiter here at Sony Pictures Animation. I primarily help hire for story and production, and we're led by Chris Leahy, who is our amazing executive director of talent acquisition. And she's not here today, along with our manager, Carlos Vasquez, who oversees design, and our coordinator, Nia Brown, who they all just do incredible things on our projects, or on our department. So pass it over to Stacy to introduce herself as well, really quickly.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm a recruiting sourcer over at Sony Pictures Animation. Prior to this, I was at DreamWorks for a couple years, but I basically source across TV and feature divisions and for all the departments that need sourcing help. So thanks for joining all.
Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with our presentation. Put this on to slideshow mode. Katie and Stacy, is this popping up okay for you all? Okay. Awesome. All right, so a little bit about Sony Pictures Animation. Katie touched upon it as well, but we are a young studio, being a little over 20 years actually in this business, creating projects well loved and awarded across the world. Some of them that you guys already mentioned as well in the chat, which we love to see. We're a division of Sony Pictures Entertainment Group here in Culver City, which is a part of Los Angeles, creating features and series that are innovative, exciting for the animation realm. So we're going to go ahead and dive into this presentation that talks about what we look for as a recruiting team here at Sony Pictures Animation, what roles to look out for, and then some tips and tricks specifically for portfolios if you're looking at story roles or visual development and design roles. Okay, so what roles do we hire for here at Sony Pictures Animation? So diving in with story and the story department, if you're looking to become a storyboard artist, this is typically all the roles that you'll see in the department to apply for and one day potentially be in. So typically for entry-level positions, you can go for apprenticeship positions or revisionist roles. Apprenticeships are more feature focused and they come based on production need and are a little bit more sporadic. We don't necessarily have seasons where we have apprenticeships happen, but when we do have them, they'll be posted on our job websites. They'll be posted on LinkedIn and everywhere where we have access to share our jobs. So keep an eye out for those. Revisionist is more for our series end. So all these different kinds of positions are basically you putting script into visuals as an artist and holding many different hats, like you're the director, you're the camera person, you're the actor. That's all encompassed and embodied in what you do as a storyboard artist. If you feel really confident and strong in your portfolio, you can go ahead and apply for storyboard artist positions as well, and then elevate your career into these leadership positions listed above. And then going into the next slide to talk about design, I'll pass it over to Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. So going into design and paint roles, you'll see this list on the right-hand side, starting from bottom to top, actually. We have color designers and 2D FX artists, prop designers who tend to be a little bit more open to junior level artists, although we also hire for senior level artists for those roles as well. Moving up, we have more mid-level career character designer, painter, background artists who design and paint. And then we have viz dev artists who have more responsibility over the world building, who can basically do a lot of those things towards the bottom, but also typically has a specific focus on one thing, let's say character design or environment design. And then at the very top, we have PDs and ADs, production designers and art directors, who are kind of in charge. They come up with what this looks like. They communicate it to the entire team. They have the most impact in terms of the overall vision and the look of the show. So they'll create the foundation, the visual guidelines, they'll communicate them, and overall, just the environment is highly collaborative. They'll all be aligning and making sure the look is cohesive at all times, and that everything is on time, within budget. So yeah, if you'd like to know more about these specific roles, feel free to check out our job postings. They should have a little bit more detail on those, and hopefully that'll help. Next slide.
Cool. So talking about non-artistic studio roles. So say you're pursuing becoming a creative in the industry as an artist, or you want to go look for avenues in overhead or creative spaces or even production. We hire for those roles as well. So for production, you'll see here on the bottom left, we hire all the way from production assistants up to line producer. The roles when you're starting to get your foot in the door and early career positions will be that PA position or the production assistant role. Sometimes, as you accumulate more experiences in your career, and so you have transferable experiences for a coordinator role, you can also apply for those. The two coordinator roles that we typically have open are our production coordinator positions and our office coordinator positions. The differences between those is our production coordinator roles. They are based on supporting the departments all in the production pipeline, whereas for an office coordinator, they support the whole production office and kind of help keep things running smoothly for the production team. And then as you continue moving along in your career, you can go for more higher leadership positions and gain more experience overseeing teams with the associate production manager roles, production manager positions, and line producer. On the flip side, if you want to join the studio side of the studio, so there's creative and overhead positions you can join as well. So they're all listed here. Talent acquisition is actually one of them too. So if you're interested in recruiting, talking to people about their careers and finding that perfect job for them in the future, that might be some place that you might want to be. We mentioned this because most of our early career opportunities are usually in all of these departments as well. For our departments, they usually have, executives or people who need support. So they will be hiring for assistants and coordinators of various different levels based on their need. So if there's something that you are passionate about inside of animation, but want to kind of dive into one of these departments as well, definitely take advantage of that and see if you feel like you have a good transferable experienced resume or some experiences that you feel like could translate really well into any of these departments. We encourage that, especially if you want to find a way to get into animation and see where you potentially might go that's outside of the creative realm. All right, so going into portfolio tips and tricks, we're going to start with story first, and then we'll pass it over to Stacy to talk about design. Oh, never mind. We're starting with design first. Sorry, go ahead, Stacy.
Trying to take my spot. No problem. Okay, so let's go over some design and portfolio, paint portfolio fundamentals that we look for. So these consist of, for us, good draftsmanship, technical drawing skills with visual appeal. You can hone this through practice with perspective, 1.2.3 point on architecture, landscapes, even figures and various spaces. You can study anatomy, going to life drawing sessions and studying from anatomy books, developing your knowledge of both human and animal, muscular and skeletal systems. We also look for color theory, knowing how to harmonize these different colors and knowing how they combine to create different kinds of moods while supporting the narrative and staying consistent with within the color palette of your story. We look at understanding of light. Maybe you have the same scenario in different lighting situations and they evoke different moods. They portray the same scene in a completely different perspective. Play around with that. Composition, very important. Staging and framing the narrative at a key story point so that it shows what's happening in a very effective and appealing way. And you can do these through thumbnails, tonal studies, and just explore how you can break up that page in a way that draws in attention. Second, storytelling and artistic style. So ask yourself who you are as a storyteller and how your artwork reflects it. What would you like to share with the world? So what evokes emotional response in you? What is important? What's intriguing or funny? Really just anything that gets you going. How do you want to convey that perspective? And you can always get as vulnerable as you feel comfortable with. Share your personal life experiences if you like. I'm sure there will be great rewards to that. Someone out there will connect with you on a deeper level, but you can do whatever you want, stay safe and you can look for outer inspiration and research subjects or genres, history, maybe, or different kind of cultures that get you excited to learn and explore more. just remember to stay patient and be kind to yourself. Know that finding your voice takes time and effort and curiosity. It's a practice. It can be never-ending process too. So, and that's great because you'll probably be constantly influenced by everything around you, and you want transformation, and that's amazing. In terms of style, we think about what kinds of textures and lines and tones and colors you would use, what kinds of compositions and lighting, what's your overall mood. And if you need help finding a style, look around you and keep drawing from maybe what you see around you, real life, still life drawing. Maybe look at books. You can try mimicking other artists that you like just for study and see what kinds of elements speak to you most. But in the end, you want to support your story with the style that is most appropriate, so that it tells it in the most effective way. Okay, third, thought process. So show us your work. Feel free to show us your process sketches, your thumbnails, your iterations for designs like backgrounds or characters. It really doesn't matter how rough they are. We just want to see how you think. And feel free to include reference photos so that we know where you're pulling from and how you're translating them. So let's say you are designing castles, then what kind of castle? It can be from Google, it can be your own image. What kind of castle are you looking at? Are you looking at something from the 1400s or before that, or costumes? What kind of culture? Yeah, and as a reminder, just try to get feedback on your work from your peers, your classmates, people who are your intended audience or your teachers. And that'll help you to see outside of your typical patterns of thinking and to make improvements outside to your work. So next slide. Thank you. So we're going to talk about what makes you stand out as an artist. So originality is key. Your individual and unique voice is what I mean by originality. So try to lean into your story, your own story, your personal identity. Create work that's authentic and interesting and something that you're super passionate about. And try to show us things that might pique our curiosity about you and want to make us want to know more about you and what you can do. We look at appeal, and appeal, of course, can come in different forms. It can be super pretty and very have perfect lines and everything, or it can be rough and not pretty and strange, but it can still have appeal. The appeal comes from having the confidence and passion show through your work. So just make sure you have that. Make sure you keep it going. Give yourself that nutrition, and that'll show through. Iteration, show your design iterations from your explorative stage. So it's really great for us to see how you think. Again, it shows that you stay curious and you're focused on the progress and development and improvement of your designs. It also stands out to show if that you're collaborative, that you've worked on projects with other people, maybe in the industry, maybe people you've seen at networking events or connected with online, even, school projects. So feel free to just display those. And because animation is such a collaborative process, it's important to showcase and make sure to credit that work appropriately. And yeah, next slide.
Cool, thank you, Stacy. So now diving into some storyboard tips and tricks and what we look for here. We want to see really strong storytelling techniques and skill sets. So if you're going for a storyboard artist or a storyboard revisionist position, try to have some of these nailed down. You may have heard some of these words as well before, and maybe some film classes that you've taken or animation storyboarding classes. So some of this might be information you already know about, but they're also key and really important. So whether you're starting a portfolio from scratch, that's a really great first step, or whether you're just trying to refine and figure out like where you need to work on for your portfolio to stand out. These are the key things that we look for. So as a storyboard artist, like I mentioned before, you're putting things from script to visual. So you are the person that's planning out all of the action. So that means the framing and the key scenes from script to those visual panels that you're drawing. You hold many different hats when you're a storyboard artist. So through these, the most important things to have in terms of storytelling skill sets is one, clarity. So this goes into when you're drawing your boards, trying to make sure that they're clean, but they don't have to be extremely, perfect. It can be gestural and loose, but you just want to make sure that they're drawn in a way that we can quickly interpret and understand what's going on. So here's some examples on the left from Hotel Transylvania. You can see that they're a little bit sketched out. These aren't like sequential storyboard panels, but these are mainly like keyframes or beat boards from a certain sequence. But you can see how even if it's a little bit loose, not all the lines are connected. It's a little bit sketchier. You can still very clearly see what's happening in this scene. So that's what we're looking for, and it can really be effective in having a recruiter or a hiring manager when they continue looking at your work. Next is staging. So taking care of where your characters are in the panel, where are they standing, and does the environment and the location make sense for where they are? So perspective can be super key when you're working on staging, and can be one of the hardest things to learn, honestly, when you're trying to become a storyboard artist, but it really makes a difference between becoming a good versus a great story artist. Next is action. So this is just going through purely what is going on in the moment in the storyboard. So looking at your character poses and, understanding why you chose them to be in that pose, or what you're having them do in the scene. So are your characters simply standing there talking to each other, or are you making the scene more interesting by moving the camera or having them do something that shows a little bit of an element of their character? So if you have a simple dialogue set up between two characters, maybe one is biting their nails and the other one is sharpening a knife. That's an example I give just because through those subtle actions that they're doing, you're actually understanding a little bit about the dynamic between those characters and what's actually going to potentially happen in that scene. Last is plot. So what is the story about? Is it interesting? Did you leave whoever's looking at your storyboards understanding what your story is trying to portray? For this one, I like to point out that strong ideas don't always have to be the most epic, final, short film pieces that you put your blood, sweat, and tears working on. We like to see personal or more simple character setups as well, and interactions, just to have a glimpse of all of these different kinds of storytelling techniques. Just make them original, imaginative, and thoughtful. Pulling them from personal experience is always a really great exercise too, to make it feel like a more genuine and grounded sequence. So onto the next slide, we're going to go into specific filmmaking techniques that, are really important to also look at, that we judge and assess when we're looking at your portfolios. So one is timing. Timing is more important when you're creating animatics, which when you're creating your portfolio for a storyboard position, they don't have to include animatics. That's just an option if you have the time and the bandwidth to create one. However, if you do have the time and bandwidth to create one and you want to put that side by side with a speaker deck or flip through panels of what you've been doing for your sequence, this is just a really great way for us to take that level up a notch and see how you're handling different moments in a scene. Maybe you even have a pre-recorded pitch or some audio that's kind of lined up with that sequence, which is really great. So we can kind of see how you're managing that. But a blueprint is basically what that animatic is. So if you want to add some timing into it, that's really key. I would suggest 3 to 5 solid sequences that you're really proud of that show your best work to add onto your portfolio. Once again, doesn't mean you have to add in like a whole short film or a group project that you finished, because sometimes, more likely than not, teams and hiring managers are just taking a few moments to look at your portfolio, and you're really just trying to pull them in to continue looking at more of your work and what you can offer. The next thing is strong gesture drawing. This kind of goes back into what Stacy mentioned in her design slides, but strong drawing and draftsmanship skills will really stand out, and that's great. But also it's totally fine if you're more gestural and loose and you have a style that is aligned to that. And as you can see from these examples, it shows that as well. They might not be completely on model, but it really shows through the gesture drawings and everything like that, like what's happening really quickly for us to interpret what's happening in the scene. So foundational figure drawing skills is really important. Go to those classes if you have accessibility to them, or, you know, even just go outside to a coffee shop and find a place where you can just draw people or draw animals that you see, just to continue practicing that muscle. So that's kind of going into gesture drawings, especially since in storyboarding, that's all you're doing is mainly gesture drawing and refining and creating different iterations of these sequences and these stories and ideas. Next is performance, which kind of connects to action from the previous slide, but we want to see performance through thought process and, you know, very thought process driven scenes. So you can do this by showcasing us different kinds of genres through your sequences and different emotions that you can tap into through your characters to diversify your range. Of those 3 to 5 solid sequences that you do add to your portfolio, maybe you can diversify the different genres there. So if you have one that's action comedy, or if you really like fantasy and you want to add like a emotional fantasy musical into your portfolio, you know, those different things really do matter, and they can even go into very nuanced emotional acting scenes as well. Performing through exaggerating your characters as well, and practicing those expressions, which is just as important in design, is really important in storyboarding too. So using references to continue practicing those, maybe even taking some improv classes, those could all help figure out what your performance looks like through your drawings. Next is camera. So if you have an interesting use of camera, that shows us that you really understand the space. And the space, I know, can be intimidating when you're drawing on a blank piece of paper or a blank, you know, Cintiq with the panel just kind of staring right at you. But try to diversify that, you know, studying some of your favorite projects, whether they're feature or series, can help you understand what directors and cameramen look at. Generally, though, if you diversify your camera shot choices, it's really great because it shows us that you can have a range of, you know, shot choices in your Rolodex. So an example is cameras, when they're close up, it shows that something is very important or something intimate is happening, whereas something that's a wide angle, it's more establishing. It gives a sense of scale and it feels more epic. So think about the camera angles and where your camera is at to make the audience feel something different. And then last but not least is style. So I believe that style really comes with strong ideas. So as you are the artist, you're helping to establish the whole visual style of the project that you're working on. So it is important that the aesthetic of your boards matches with what the designs are for the project once you start working in the industry. But this is also kind of where foundational drawing skills really come in, because as you keep refining that, more of your style will really come up. And then you can ensure that your drawings, whatever project that you're on, will align with the visual style of that project. And maybe you can brand yourself as well sometimes as being the person who does, you know, the jokes and the comedy punch-ups, or maybe you are the person that people go to for those really high-hitting dynamic action scenes. So style will eventually come. So just think about all those as you're creating your portfolio. Next, really quickly, just going through production management and studio jobs. So those other departments that we mentioned earlier, if you're applying with a resume or a cover letter, this is Miles Morales given an example of what a really effective resume can look like. He has it really organized. It's very easy to read. There's a touch of creativity. We you know, working in animation, you want to be a little bit designy and show a little bit of your artistic flair if you want to as well. Shows that you have, you know, an interest and a strong desire to be in this creative industry. And then spell checking. You'd be really surprised at how many resumes and applications we get where sometimes you know, little grammatical errors are seen, and they really can stand out, especially when you're in a pool of candidates who may have kept refining and kept looking at their resume or shared it with some of their closest peers and mentors to double check all of that to make sure they have the best application that they can when they apply. And those little things do make a difference, especially if you're going for these roles that you know, it's a key when you have detail orientation. Organization is one of those top things that we look for. So those are just some quick tips. Last things that I'll mention about this is just making sure you have your contact info somewhere on your resume, where you're located generally, email address, phone number, maybe even like a small bio about what your aspirations are, which is really helpful if you're going for a role that you don't have necessarily like any experience in, but you want to showcase why you're aspiring that role and how that will help you in your career journey. All right, so I will pass it over to Stacy to talk about sourcing and how we find talent.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Christina. So since we're kind of tight on time, we're at the end of our presentation. I will speed through this really quickly. How do studios find talent? We find talent both through in-person events and online, sourcing through social media or job sites. We look at LinkedIn, the social media channels like Instagram and Twitter, or portfolio sites like Behance or ArtStation. We also look at go to industry events for emerging talents. We connect with up and coming folks at our booths at Afro Animation and things like Artist Alleys at Lightbox and CTN Expo. And of course, we look through applicants, not only through our SPA Careers portal, but also through external job sites, industry organizations like you guys, Asians in Animation, Latinx in Animation, WIA, Rise Up, and Black and Animated. We also find people through our early careers programs, such as training and apprenticeship programs over at our parent company, SPE. And last but not least, our referrals. They put people on our radar and who are interested in working on our studio. So that is it for our slide. Next, end of presentation. We have 2 QR codes here for you to follow us on our social channels where you can keep up to date on what's going on here at SPA. And feel free to apply to our open roles on our site, and we'll keep you in mind for current and future opportunities. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy and Christina, for sharing that amazing presentation. It really shows that these people, these recruiters, they know their stuff and they really want to, presenting all of this tips and advice, want you to get the job. So let's see if we can poke their brains a little bit more and ask them some more questions, if you don't mind.
Cool. Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Do you want me to go ahead and, well, I'll keep the slide up just in case anybody wants to take a moment to look at the QR codes, but I'll put it down in like 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So let's head on to panelist questions. The first one, so much of looking for work is about connecting with the right people. What is your advice for networking or reaching out to a recruiter for opportunities? Are there any best practices or things to avoid? You'd like to go first?
Yeah, I'll start with this one. So this is kind of looking at this side, which is actually a great leeway into this question, but follow us on our social media platforms. Don't feel afraid to send introductory like messages to different recruiters. Sometimes it's hard to connect on recruiters on LinkedIn at times if they're like getting swamped with messages. So another way, as you're waiting for a response from them on these different kinds of social channels, especially LinkedIn, is to also, reach out to people that you encounter online or in person that are in roles that you want to be in one day. So if you see someone on LinkedIn who's a story artist or a production manager or production assistant, whatever level they're at, if they're in the department that you want to one day be in, I would just say take a shot at reaching out to see if they respond. But the balance with that is just trying to find a healthy way where you're not spamming them all the time. A good rule of thumb, I think, is checking in every 2 to 3 months. A new position or something that you see online that was posted that you're interested in gets up there. And also remember to ask questions that are not just around, hey, like, I saw this job and I really want it, and I was wondering if you can help me out. Try to foster it around who you're reaching out to and speaking to them as well and trying to learn more about them so you can create a relationship with them in some way. So that way, as you're building your professional network, you can continue to reach out for advice and help, and they can keep you in mind for other positions. And I think something that you'll realize as you get into this industry that is that animation is very small. So you will definitely encounter the same people, maybe work on projects with them again and again. So you want to make sure that you're building good repertoire and make a good first impression with the people that you reconnect with. So that way they can remember you. But Stacy, did you have anything else to add for that question?
Yeah, no, that covered pretty much everything. That was really awesome. Just to add in a couple of things myself, uh, expanding on that, making connections and knowing that you're going to be probably seeing those familiar faces over and over again before you even have a job in the industry and after. Just focus on making those connections authentic, I guess. Build those friendships. Not just going for the job, not it shows through. And it's not helpful all the time to just be focused on the job itself, because a lot of the industry is about the people and the friends that you meet and helping each other out when if things get tough, or and supporting each other. So yeah, you want to establish that great impression at the start. Be prepared, keep that conversation going. As Christina said, every 2 or 3 months, or whenever you've applied to a job or you have any portfolio or career updates, and try to keep your emails simple and clear and concise as possible. That'll make it easier for the recruiters to get back to you more quickly too. Yeah.
Such great responses. I mentioned this in the chat, but again, recruiters are people too. They're not just the ones that have all the insight about jobs, but you want to really establish a connection, a relationship with them and get to know them as people. So great advice. Next, for those breaking into animation, what makes a candidate stand out to you either from the work they present or how they present themselves as well?
I'll start off on this. I think it always makes a really good impression if you are presenting yourself as someone very prepared and organized. For example, it comes in the very little things, like you meet someone at an event and they have their digital or physical business card ready. There's a quick way of exchanging information. There's a lot going on. So you're ready in that way. And you also have a positive attitude. You show growth mindset. You have patience. That shows that you have a little bit of understanding of how it goes in the animation industry. And these qualities really, it shows up through little moments over longer periods of time. It shows up through the way you word your emails, the way even your website is designed. Is it clean? Is it presentable? Is it easy to see what you're focused on? And yeah, I think that once for artists, once you've had a portfolio review and received feedback for your work, if you're able to apply them and improve your work and just come back to the recruiter with follow-up on your progress and show how you're doing, then it's really great to see, because it shows that you are willing to do the hard work. You have drive and ambition, and also keeping in mind that this would be a key part of the production process and animation, just to get feedback and rework it, sometimes even scrap it all together and start anew. So this is just a really good preliminary practice for you.
Yeah. And then I think piggybacking on that, for me, I personally love looking at just organized portfolios and organized resumes, because that's kind of like what we talked about in the presentation. So, that presentation is really key if you're, wanting to present yourself in a really positive and professional way. Especially as you just want to make sure that it's very easy to navigate on your website or your resume or your application, and you have very clear goals that stand out on what you want to do. That's usually what stands out to me. And maybe it's because we work in a very organized environment. So even like, as a creative that works in art or design, or even as someone who works in production or other overhead departments, that attention to detail is really key and can, really make a difference between someone who seems like they're just kind of starting out and figuring it out versus someone who's ready and someone who we can reach out to for a specific role and feel like we can entrust them with the job. So if you're introducing yourself as well to a person, be genuine and amicable. So many of the things that Stacy, mentioned already, and just trying to be as true to who you are and talking about your goals and what you want to do. So that way, as you're conversing and building up your network, the recruiter or the hiring manager that you're presenting yourself to can keep you in mind for those roles, and you can manifest it, into the world and try to chase what that ultimate dream may be, even if your avenues to get there might be, different or not always the most linear path, and that's okay. I think a lot of people in animation have a very non-linear path. So that's something that is really encouraging and hopefully will help you as you continue to drive to get into this industry. But yeah.
I love the thoughts. Um, you know, responding to that, it's so important to come prepared, because if you want the job, you have to come with your 100% your best. So again, as they mentioned before, having your materials ready, presenting yourself, even being dressed up for the job or just to meet your recruiters or studios, that's so important, how you present yourself. It's not just about art for people that are trying to become artists. It's also, you know, can you communicate well? Are you good with working with others? And again, organization, as they mentioned before, is also important. So lots of good points to keep in mind.
Mhm.
All right, let's see if I can ask another question. One about red flags. Do you both have any advice on mistakes you've seen people make while trying to break into animation? Anything red flags people should avoid in their portfolio or application?
I can start with this one, and I do also want to preface that I don't want to focus on the negative here, and also know that every, part of your career journey where you feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or oh, maybe I should have cleaned this up better and all that. Those are all learning moments, and things that every one of us had to go through to get to where we are today and continuing to aspire, to get to what our ultimate goals are. We're all still learning and trying to navigate that, in our separate lives. And so there's a lot of things to juggle, when looking at work life and your personal life and trying to make sure that you're presenting yourself well. So with that, I would just give yourself grace as you're going through the, process of interviewing, applying, getting screened and just going through that. And so there sometimes this is hard because there's not always a right answer, but just some tips that I think are helpful is just knowing that and it ties into a lot of the things that we already talked about, but the relationship that you build with the recruiting manager or the hiring manager can really make a lasting impression that stays for a long time, even if it's for one role, that can also seed into other roles. If you make, a wishy-washy or poor impression, it can impact the other ones down the line as you continue to reach out to them for help or for any questions. So once again, kind of honing into being honest and authentic and just being prepared, like Katie said, those are all advantages to the process, because at the end of the day, the recruiter is really trying to help you succeed, and they want you to get that role, and they want to advocate for you for these positions. So try to help them out by presenting yourself well and just continuing to have authentic conversations, like we keep talking about. But just know that if you go for one role, that can continue into further conversations. So it's almost like an ongoing hiring process and this continuous relationship that you're, building professionally with the recruiter or the other people that you're connected with in your network. So I think one, if I could say red flag really, but maybe it's just also, once again, like a learning moment, is knowing that as you continue to reach out about positions, try to be really solid in knowing what you actually want to do as best as you can, because the recruiter's job is not to choose the job for you. A lot of the times, I get reached out with a portfolio or a resume, and I'm totally happy to help them figure out how to make it better and elevate it to stand out. But at the same time, if you're asking the recruiter or someone, within your network, but specifically a recruiter, what role do you think that I would be a good fit for? Or what role do you think that I should apply for? It might sound like an innocent question, but at the other side, if a recruiter is hiring for a specific role, that gives us the idea that you might not know exactly what you want to do yet, and we want you to have the autonomy and the decision making over that, so that way we can help you reach your goals. So I would say just study the job description, study more about what you really want to do, and as you're navigating that and figuring that out, I think those are great questions to ask maybe like a mentor or a peer. But yeah, I would just say that's, I think it's your job at the end of the day to figure out what do you think you want to apply for and go for it, and the recruiter will help get you there as best as they can. Stacy, do you have any others on that?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great point. Uh, to expand on that, from the artist's point of view, I would organize the portfolio in a way that it wouldn't need any explanation on your part. It would just speak for itself. So if a recruiter came across your portfolio online, they know exactly what your interests are, what the hierarchy is for you, and they see clear distinctions in between each area of focus. And it's totally fine to have multiple areas of interest. Just make sure that you organize them in a way that's clear and understandable to someone who's just looking and randomly walked into your site. So yeah, curate that portfolio as a whole. And the recruiter, of course, is not your agent or your counselor. They are helping you out, but also helping the studio out and trying to match the roles. So yeah, that's I guess I didn't really come across personally super red flags in my years as a sourcer, but I guess a couple of minor things that came up that sort of slow down our process would be when someone just doesn't add their password to their portfolio or their application, or they don't have any contact information easily searchable. So those are little minor things, easily fixed.
Great points made. All about being prepared, knowing what you want, the job you want, having your portfolio organized so that, recruiters like Stacy and Christina can instantly tell what the job or role you're looking for is. And yeah, just again, as I talked about before, the recruiters are going to be looking at your portfolio for maybe the first time, and they don't know what to expect. So you want to help them as much as possible to showcase who you are. So great points made all around. So I think now we'll be heading to audience Q&A. Stacy and Christina, are you ready?
Yeah.
Right. My first question is, Diego asks, how do we know when our skills, our work is industry ready?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would first look at artists that are already working in the industry and just like do a quick compare and contrast on like your portfolio versus their portfolio. And there's not ever like a right portfolio or a right skill set. Sometimes it can be based on the project need. So maybe a project that we're hiring for is open to someone who has a skill level that you have versus maybe they're actually looking for someone who's greener or even like more senior, for that specific role. It really depends on where the production is at and what project is looking, and knowing what the hiring managers are specifically looking for. So I would say just continue to refine the work that you have, and keep practicing your skill sets, because even the most experienced artists in this industry, they're always practicing. And like we said, always flexing that muscle and learning what's new and, how to be just a better artist in general. It's a lifelong journey, it's not just, oh, you got the job once and then that you're set, right? Like you're continuing to, vie for the jobs that you really want and be matched with the projects continuously in your career. So sometimes it does take a little bit of hustle and determination to continue to practice that for yourself. But I would say at the baseline, look at artists that maybe are at the same skill level or a little bit above who have been in the industry for a little bit and see what they did. And once again, reaching out to get some advice, continuing to come to panels like this, to learn more about how you can help yourself in that process. And then, yeah, I think just practice is what really makes perfect. And once again, as you're applying, just know that different skill levels can be applied for different kinds of roles. So really study the job description, network, and see if people will give you a chance to critique your work and give you some feedback as well. So at the baseline where you can work on to continue improving the skills that you need to refine.
Yeah, I agree. Just educate yourself and make yourself prepared. Look at those inspirations and examples that you see online. Maybe you can do a quick LinkedIn search for artists who are working at your favorite studios, or and also keep in mind that when you're looking over your work to judge it, you probably have a more biased view than someone else who just came upon it, or someone who doesn't know you, doesn't know your anything about you, but just sees your work. So it's kind of awesome that there's social media is a platform where you can get some public opinion if you're up for it. Or you can go to a trusted source, go to a teacher or peers and get constant feedback on your work. And that'll help clarify where your work is at in terms of standard.
Mhm.
Yes, as Stacy and Christina mentioned earlier, animation is this industry is such a collaborative process. Definitely take advantage of, all of your peers, all the people who are attending this chat too. If you want to share your portfolios with each other and just get feedback from one another and really, compare how you're doing and see what areas you can improve on. So, all right, next question. Brett asked, is it easy to transfer between departments at Sony Pictures Animation? Say if you work in marketing but want to work in character design later on, is it common for people to move around to different jobs in the industry?
I think it is but at the same time, I want to caveat that by making sure that you are focused and like doing the best job that you can in that specific department or role that you're in. But it's totally it's totally acceptable, and people encourage you to go aspire for what your ultimate goal is. So a lot of the times when you're kind of navigating that in your career, I think just having continuous conversations with the right people to help you get there is really a positive thing. But the tricky part is just making sure that in that same time, you are staying really dedicated that whatever position is at the moment. Because once again, animation is small. Even if you're trying to transition from one department to the next, they are most likely going to know and talk to each other. So you want to make sure that you have a good impression on them and have solid experience with that team, so that way they can refer you, or they can help you and guide you to whatever that next position might be. So if you want to move from a non-creative role to a creative position, always do the practice on the side, continue to get critiques and feedback on your work, but at the same time during your day in your main job, make sure to put your all into that as well. So that way people will try to, help you get there and build those kinds of relationships. But I would say, just navigating from cross-pollinating from whether that's an artist position to a non-artist position, or maybe even just going from feature to series, it happens. But once again, it really depends on like the relationships that you build, your skill sets and the level that you're at, and just kind of doing work, like homework outside of your own work, but it's definitely a story that you hear all the time of people just figuring things out as they go, and they're realizing, oh, like they were really passionate about this one thing, and then they found out later that they're actually passionate about another. I actually have a similar experience to that, where my whole college career, I thought I wanted to be a storyboard artist, and I really learned a lot about story and like what makes it effective, and how I can be the best story artist that I can be. But then once I got my first industry job, it was a learning and development internship, and so that was not near story, but it was still in animation. So I thought like, okay, great, I can continue my conversation with my hiring manager to let them know like, hey, I'm really excited about this role, but my ultimate dream job is to one day become a story artist. And she was really really encouraging for me to go to coffee chats and talk to different story artists, and being in learning and development, it was a really advantageous spot for me because I got to help cater for workshops and classes and interact with a lot of different story artists and get feedback on my work. But at the same time, it being in learning and development, I learned so much about the overhead space and all these different avenues there that I never thought I could even be considered for. And I also found a joy in all of those different kinds of departments and what it means to actually, work on the studio side. And that's what introduced me to artist management and talent acquisition, and that grew my interest there. It didn't mean my interest for being a story artist went away, but at the same time, I realized, wow, like I have a passion for this and I have skill sets that I can utilize here that I find joy and fulfillment in. So I'm curious to see where that goes. And then lo and behold, now I'm working as a recruiter that still is connected to story because I help hire for story artists and and people in production. So so as you're figuring things out and going from maybe department to department or industry to industry, if you have a clear goal in mind, that's great, but just know it's okay if those, aspirations change as well. But Stacy, do you have any tips on that?
No, those are all amazing tips. Not sure I have anything useful to add here. I do, I mean, I personally also can relate in that I had an artistic background. I majored in illustration in art school, and then I discovered that I always thought that I wanted to be an artist in animation. I got my production internship at Nickelodeon, not even knowing what production was. I thought it was an artist job. And then on the first day, I realized it was production and it's different. And on that note, I also want to say that PA roles are very entry level roles. If you are an artist and you just want to find out more about the industry and the production pipeline, it's an awesome role to start off with. Maybe you might even fall in love with the role, but and stay there forever, which is also great. But it's not like it's open to artists and non-artists alike. So it's a really great way to learn. Um, and just to reemphasize what Christina said about building relationships and having transparency and what you want with people, and what you want with your career goals, that's super important. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
Lovely responses. It's interesting to hear both of you were interested in pursuing maybe art or some other direction, but now you found, your calling in recruiting. So, good advice to, even if you want to, even if you start in one job and you switch to another, it's important to stay focused on your current job. Again, relationships are so important in this industry. So you want to put your best at all times, whether you're in one position or another. Always give your 100% on that. I think we can ask one more question. So, how would you suggest integrating yourself in a community of artists, people who work in animation after you graduate? So these are for recent college graduates and students.
Yeah, I think. Oh, Stacy, do you want to take it? Go ahead.
No, could you repeat the question? I don't think I caught that.
How would you suggest integrating yourself in a community of artists and people who work in animation?
Got it. Go ahead, Christina.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to mention on one of the final slides that we have, there's so many different organizations like Asians Animation, Black and Animated, Latinx Animation. There's so many ways there for you to start integrating yourself into the industry and find people who have the same interests and goals that you to help elevate you to find that industry job. So I think this is a really great start already if you're attending this talk. And we also have lots of other talks in our summer speaker series for the rest of the summer that are going to be diving into more of those specific departments like story, art, production, creative development, and they'll be more specific into those realms so you can learn more about those as well. But this is all great exposure and great resources to continue, figuring out what you want to do and navigating that and getting some advice on how to get your foot in the door. So I think just going for those different kinds of nonprofit or animation organizations is a really great start to start integrating yourself and maybe find mentorship opportunities if that's offered. I think women in animation even they offer mentorship or mentee circles and things like that. Even going to animation expos and events like CTN or Lightbox, those are really great ways to also network and expand. And it never hurts to try and to just try to put yourself out there. All it takes is just that one motivated step forward. And then you never know where that next step will lead you to. So I think that's a great way to figure out, how to get integrated into the animation community and start those conversations. But yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I know that there are quite several of you here attending who might be outside of California, who maybe you're concerned that you're kind of not around the industry and the events, and maybe you can't make it to them. That is totally fine. Don't be too concerned about that. That's what social media is for. That's what online courses are for. Just do what you can virtually, and there are plenty of opportunities out there.
Well, on that note, we are about time, so I'll just close with some remarks. Thank you all for joining us today and for your incredible questions and your responses. I love seeing everyone in the comments. A big shout out to our two panelists, Stacy and Christina, for taking their time to share all this knowledge with us today. If we didn't get to your questions today, don't worry, the recruiting team at Sony has been collecting all of your questions and we'll use them for future recruiter tips on Sony Picture Animation's LinkedIn page. So be sure to follow them there. Thank you all for attending this panel, and we look forward to see you at the upcoming talks. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.